You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Are our brains actually antennas for our intuition? The fourth and final part of the Hypnotica series is coming up. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer. What if everything we've been told about holistic health, healing, and well-being is only part of the story? Because thriving in today's world looks different than it used to. Here, we challenge the narratives, rethink what it means to become human, and explore how that shapes the way we lead, live, and step into our full potential. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to our special Hypnotica series. In this fourth and final part of the Hypnotica series, we examine the boundaries of our memory beyond the limits of a single lifetime to explore the deep-seated origins of our current fears and talents. We consider the possibility that the brain acts less like a storage vault and more like an antenna, tuning into frequencies that hold the stories of who we once were. Craig Meriwether is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, neurolinguistic programming specialist, and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may be keeping them from reaching their full potential. For over 12 years, Craig has been helping people heal from early childhood trauma, helping cancer patients with pain control, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, students with test anxiety, children with nightmares, entrepreneurs with confidence, athletes with peak performance, and anyone who may be dealing with overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. Here is the fourth and final part of this fascinating series, Past Life Regression Therapy with Craig Meriwether. Hello and welcome back, everyone, to our fourth and final part of the Hypnotica series. And it has been quite the journey, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you for staying with us and tuning into the series. And today we will be wrapping the series up with an episode about past life regression. And if you haven't listened to the first three parts yet, make sure you head over to the Jōrni Podcast and take a look at the first three parts, where in part number 3, we talked about spiritual hypnotherapy, for example. So hop over there, have a look, get yourself familiarized so that you're ready to dive into this episode with us. And of course, here with me is our special guest, Craig Meriwether, who will take it from here.
Thank you so much. Once again, I appreciate all the time and effort you're putting into this, you and Tracy. And it's really a fun discussion to have. And please, I'm happy to chat with people in the comment section when this is all released and continue on and answer any whatever questions anybody might have, or set up a call or something, talk one-on-one. But this is all the various parts of this, part 1 through 3, leading up to what is past life regression all about. We talked a bit of the science behind it in spiritual hypnotherapy and what's going on in the brain in terms of the brain being more of an antenna and a receiver and transmitter of information rather than this storage house. There's this big warehouse of a storage unit in the skull, but it seems to be more of the brain acts like an antenna pulling in the information. What we can do, if people remember the old car radios, I know it's different now and how everything works in terms of streaming and hooking up Bluetooth to your phone and all this. But back in the day, we had the car radio. And, if you live in a big town, there could potentially be 50 radio stations all around between the talk radio and the college stations, the university stations, and then the sports, and then all sorts of kinds of music, from classical to hip hop to rock to jazz to country or whatever. So there's all these different kind of radio stations, but when you turn on the radio, you just don't get one big mess of radio and static. You tune into one frequency and pull in that information. So you hear the music, you hear the talk, and maybe it's a news station, you're done with the news, you got tired of the news, I want to hear music, so you change the station. And that antenna on the car hood is vibrating microscopically to attract that one signal You pull it in from the airwaves, and I don't know how that works. Just shoot frequencies into the air, and this antenna pulls in that information, and a little transducer in your radio, your car radio, turns that frequency back into sound. And that record that's being played at the radio station, or the two people talking about something, sports or politics or whatever, that information that got sent through their antenna, through their radar dish into the airwaves, you're pulling it in, and your transducer is turning that back into sound. Or if you're the old style TVs with your rabbit ears, you're pulling in that information, and then your transducer is turning the frequency back into image and sound. As we discussed last time in part 3, that's seemingly what your brain is doing. I go way more detail about it in last episode. So your brain is pulling in this information, and not just extraordinary information like past lives and things, or exploring spirit world, but even they're indicating that memories of what happened last year on vacation. Where'd you go? What did you do? How much fun did you have? Maybe back in school. You're 16 years old. What school were you going to at 16? Was it big school, small school, boarding school? Who were your friends? Who was in your graduating class? Was it a big class, small class? Did you do sports? Were you an athlete? Did you do music, drama? Were you one of the cool kids that smoked cigarettes behind the locker room or whatever? It's a memory. It's not like you're time traveling. Not like in the movies, the time traveling movies. It's not like you're going back in time and altering things. No, you're just having a memory. You're pulling in a memory. And so we can do this not only with just me asking somebody about, oh, tell me about school when you were a teenager or a little kid, or what's your earliest memory, or tell me about that vacation you took a couple years ago. You're accessing information, and maybe your memory is more of a visual memory, or maybe it's just a knowing of, oh, we took a plane flight and we landed here and then we went to the hotel, and maybe you're just knowing the information, like you're downloading it. Or maybe it's like an experience, like you're actually there, like it's a 3D experience. Oh yeah, I felt the sand on my feet and it was warm. People have different ways of remembering. We all have the 5 different senses: what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. And may remember back in school, people talking about visual learners as opposed to auditory learners, and as opposed to kinesthetic learners. So some people have to see to order to understand, see how it's done. Other people have to have it explained to them. Other people have to have their hands on in order to really understand it. So you can also access memories in different ways. It's not always the same. And I think some people get a little frustrated because their experience isn't exactly like they read about in Brian Weiss's book or Dolores Cannon's book. And so, of course not. There's 8 billion people at the moment, and there's going to be several different ways of experiencing information. And of the 100,000 people that Brian Weiss has worked with over them, he's 82. I did a workshop with him last summer. 700 people were at this workshop. He did a workshop the weekend before. So just in a 2-weekend period, he worked with 1,400 people just in a 2-weekend period, let alone he's been doing it for 40 years since, the Many Lives, Many Masters came out in 1988. He's been doing this for 40 years. How many people has he worked with? Are they all going to have the same experience? No. They have different ways of experiencing this, just like people have different ways of experiencing a memory. And yeah, they're going to make it a little more exciting to write about in a book. They want to grab your attention, and they maybe even goose it a little bit. I'm not saying they did, but I'm just saying the book needs to be a little bit entertaining to grab your attention. That's not probably the experience most people have. That's one person's experience, just of the hundreds of thousands that Brian Weiss personally has worked with, whether in a group setting or one-on-one, let alone the people Dolores Cannon worked with, let alone the hundreds of thousands of people Michael Newton worked with over the course of his 40 years of doing the work, from 1969 to when he passed away in 2011. People have different ways of experiencing this information, just like they have different ways of experiencing a memory of vacation a couple of years ago. But we all have the ability to do this work, as I explained in part 3. The mechanics behind it, the biology behind it. And so what we do in past life regression, specifically what I do, and so I just have to go with my experiences of working with people, is I like the Michael Newton work. I like Journey of Souls. I like Destiny of Souls. I write a lot about it in my own book, Past Lives Guidebook. about the importance of the way I believe his protocol works. Because we not only access memory and insights from a past life, maybe just for curiosity's sake, and that's fine too. That's a worthy way of wanting to do this work. But we also move up into that soul world, which I think is really important, that life between lives, as he calls it, because that's where healing happens. Now, healing can happen just through insight, through understanding, through knowledge. It's, oh, now I understand why maybe these patterns show up in my life, or these feeling states show up when certain things happen. Maybe understanding is enough. And a past life regression can certainly be helpful with that. But by moving up into that soul world, that's where, if deep healing needs to happen, you can disconnect from the negativity of that past life that may be affecting you in this life. Just we talked about in maybe part 1 or part 2 about maybe somebody in their 70s or 80s, or 80 years old, and maybe because of trauma they experienced as a little kid, maybe they grew up in a home that wasn't very safe, maybe they were even suffered abuse. They're still being affected by it 70 years later, 80 years later. And so as an adult, you think, okay, with the wisdom and life experience of an adult, the knowledge and information we have as adults, okay, that was a child, we can let that go. No, it still affects us because we haven't let it go. We haven't found a way to resolve and heal that aspect of our psyche, our emotions, our mindset, whatever, our spirit. You can imagine if past life regression, in terms of what is affecting us from a past life. And this is, we already talked about from last time in terms of the work Michael Newton did with so many hundreds of thousands of people. Michael Newton's Institute is still going. They just released a new book a couple of years ago. 60 years of research with people who experience soul world and the healing that can be accomplished there. This isn't just 1 or 2 people they worked with. This is 60 years of working with probably hundreds of thousands of people at this point. And understanding not only the importance of moving somebody in that soul state, but the healing that can happen there and the insights and discoveries you can gain about your current life. And that's, so what we do with, or specifically the model I use in terms of past life regression therapy. And I like to add on the word therapy because, of course, you can do this work out of curiosity. You read Brian Weiss, you read Dolores Cannon, and that sounds fascinating or interesting. Or maybe you just get to the point where I've tried talk therapy for years. I've done the EDMR. I've done all these different therapies, and I still feel this way. I still feel that way. I still have the anger, the anxiety. And you read Brian Weiss, or you listen to a podcast series, or you watch a documentary on YouTube or something. And you think, that feels comfortable. It feels familiar. Maybe we'll try past life regression to see if there's any connection to any past hurt or pain. Just as somebody maybe in their 80s hears a podcast or watches a documentary or reads a book or something and said, oh, maybe I should release some of that stuff. I'm not even sure what it's about. I just been feeling anxious. I work with somebody in her 70s. I may have mentioned this in one of the other episodes. I work with somebody in her 70s, and she wasn't really sure. I feeling anxious. Well, how long have you been feeling anxious? Since I was 19. She's like 72, 73. Been feeling anxious since she was 19. And she wasn't quite clear as to why. Our subconscious mind understands because it's creating that. It's pulling in information when events in her life get overwhelming and creates a warning signal of the feeling state of anxiety and things like this. So she knows why she's doing it, but it's within the subconscious. As that computer programming to keep her safe gets activated, the warning signal of anxiety or anger, overwhelm, or whatever the feeling state may be gets activated. What if the memory goes past being a child, or past being a newborn, past being in utero? That's extraordinary work to do. What's going on while you're growing in your mother's womb? Is she upset? Is she angry? Is she nervous? Is she anxious about being a mother? Is there people who were born premature? How does that affect your emotional state as you move forward? Maybe being in the NICU and being in, what do you call it? When the glass container, that's not the right word. When newborn premature babies have to be put in the incubator and maybe not feel human touch for a month. Talking with somebody last night, just at dinner, we're just chit-chatting about family and things, and said, her back in the day, her brother must be in his 60s. So we're looking at the early 60s, late 1950s, when he was born prematurely, taken right away from mom, and mom didn't get to touch him for a month. They don't know anything. back then. I should say that's rude. They didn't have the understanding that a newborn baby needs to feel the human touch of mom. And he didn't get that for a month and plus being premature. And so how does that affect you? And can that be resolved in some way using these techniques of hypnotherapy? Imagine going back even further, swimming out of the shallow end of the pool and going into the deep end of the pool. And if we've been experiencing these past lives as a way of learning and growing and developing as souls, like this earth is this training facility, or maybe some researchers out there, some scientists are saying it's a computer simulation. And there's a whole different conversation right there, and just in terms of what this reality is. But a computer simulation, what's a computer simulation? It's practicing something you're going to need somewhere else, like a flight simulator a pilot might get on because they have to fly into Heathrow Airport. They've never been to London before, and they are flying from New York to London next week. They get that assignment, and they're going to want to practice because, what happens if there's really bad turbulence over the Atlantic? They want to be prepared for that on what they're going to do. It's a huge lightning storm landing at the airport. What are they going to do? They switch runways at the last minute. Heathrow gets shut down and they have to fly to Gatwick. How's that going to work? They're going to practice all these different scenarios because they're going to need it in the future in real life. Maybe there's no storm and it's just a perfect flight, but they want to be prepared. And so potentially that's what this Earth experience for us. And we, just like the airline pilots, are going to, let's try it this way, let's try it that way. And maybe we're doing that here. What happens? Let's say there's no electricity and we're back in the 1500s. How's that going to work? What happens if the family situation is like this? How do I learn compassion and empathy because I grew up in a situation like this, or this time period, or this part of the world? And you can see that maybe by going through various lives that we can learn and grow and develop going through school. I mean, here in America, we have first grade, second grade, all the way through high school. And in 12th grade, we graduate. Then we go to college, we go to university, get our bachelor's degree, get our master's degree, get our PhD. What if we're here somewhere in third or fourth grade as 9-year-olds, and we're still learning and growing, trying to get that master's degree as light in life? And so we're going to move through these various lessons, just like learning math. You just don't start writing those crazy equations in the movies of the genius people writing those crazy equations on the chalkboard. You got to start with 2 + 2 = 4 when you're like 5 years old. And then when you're 6 years old, you learn about subtraction. And then you're getting older and you're 8, 9 years old, you're learning about the times tables and then long division and then algebra and trigonometry and calculus. Then you're getting your master's degree, writing those crazy equations. It took several years. So you can imagine if each grade you're moving through in school is a life, you're moving through several lives just to understand mathematics. So what about love? What about compassion? The idea around, I may have mentioned this last time, like wealth and abundance. Not only would it be important if you want to learn about wealth and abundance to have the yacht and the house in the south of France and the apartment overlooking Central Park and Tokyo or wherever, you have all the stuff. You have the Golden Palace and the Golden Bathroom. And would it also not be helpful for you in understanding wealth and abundance to understand what it is to live in poverty in the streets of Calcutta, or live paycheck to paycheck and wondering how you're going to pay your bills next month and have to stand in line at the food bank? Would that be helpful for you to learn about wealth and abundance? Maybe. And maybe this life, so, okay, this is the lesson. Maybe just taking that chemistry class in university, maybe somebody doesn't do so well. So what do they got to do? They got to take the class over again, or go to summer school, or get a tutor or something, because you want to learn the lesson. And so maybe we have to repeat it. So maybe you get with your soul mate, your soul family, and say, that didn't go very well. Let's try it again. Only this time, instead of the 2000s, maybe we go back to the 1800s and try it in that way. Or maybe this was so successful, let's see if we can make it work in the 1500s or something. And all this information is coming from, that I'm talking about here, is coming from the research of Michael Newton. And again, and the Michael Newton Institute at this point. And again, he didn't work with just like one or two people. He wasn't like a medium or a psychic channeling this information. He's working with, and the Institute itself has been working with hundreds of thousands of people over 60 years who have similar experiences to each other in the soul world. myself working with people over the decades or so, it's like, yeah, they have similar experiences to each other. Experiences, and not with me asking leading questions, but just where do you need to go next in this spirit world? Oh, I need to go to the spiritual library. Like, whoa, I never said anything about the spiritual library. And you haven't read the Michael Newton books. How do you know about that? It's a goose pimply making. You get hairs stand up on the back of your neck. It's like, whoa, that was wild. So in terms of doing a past life regression, in terms of the model I use, and again, heavily based on the work of Michael Newton and his protocols that they have developed over the last 60 years or so, is that and through discussion, focus on what's the focus going to be. And it may be go back to the past life that is just influencing this current life. It could be that general. Maybe there's something very specific. Somebody has a deep fear of ocean water. Somebody recognizes a certain pattern within relationships of the people they keep getting involved with. Maybe there's this a deep-seated anger that after years of talk therapy and healing work, they still can't resolve. Maybe that's what to focus on. So like turning the channel on your TV. So now it's all streaming. You go to Netflix or whatever, Hulu or something. If you just turn it on and start watching a show, and that's the show you're going to watch. It's, okay, maybe it's not that great a show. But if you know exactly what show you want to watch, you know where to go, you know how to find it, and you get to watch the show you want to watch. Same with this. It's like you can just pull a book off the library shelf, and maybe it's a book about kangaroos. That's interesting. I guess kangaroos are interesting. But if you know exactly what book you want, then you know where in the library to go get it. And the same with this. So it can be as general as go back to the past life that's most influencing your current life. Go back to the past life that is the karmic cause of all the anger the person's experiencing. Go back to the past life where he developed this talent as a fill in the blank, guitar player, piano player, martial arts, dance, mathematics, whatever, science. You can focus on whatever you like, and it may just be out of curiosity. Somebody has a great talent. Yo-Yo Ma, considered the greatest cello player of all time, or at least live today. He started playing violin at the age of 3. He started playing cello at the age of 4. Who does that? An extraordinarily virtuosic musician does, but did it take him lifetimes to get to that level of artistry? And maybe the first couple of lives when he started playing cello, he was terrible at it. He had to grow in each life, just like learning math, starting with 2 + 2 = 4. And so you can explore those lives. So what we're going to do, especially in the one-on-one work, and especially if somebody's looking for some healing work, again, they may not understand what it's about or where it's coming from, but that's the uniqueness of this kind of therapeutic techniques is focus on the feeling state, the phrase, go back to the past life, that focuses on the right book in the library. And of course, if somebody lived to be 103 years old in that past life, we of course can't go through every day of that 103 years, even if it's a longer session. So oftentimes I'll be doing 3.5 hour long sessions with people. That seems like a really long time, but just imagine the amount of information. I can do an 1.5 hour session, and we talk a little bit and about what a person wants to work on. We drop down into that relaxed state of mind and body and spirit, and we access, and you have a great experience in 1.5 hours. So just imagine how much more information you can get if it's a 3-hour session. But of course, either way, can't go through all 103 years of that past life. And so we're going to focus on 4 or 5 specific events in that past life. And so move into the first scene of that past life, discover where you are, who you are, specifically in this scene, how old you are, just getting some identifying information, what's happening, why even is this significant? How are you feeling about this? Is it a joyful feeling anxious, feeling afraid? Just establishing the scene, and then we're going to fade that out. Now I'm going to count to 3. You're going to move to the next significant event in that life, whether you're younger, older, the same age. Maybe you are going to be younger. Maybe you're 25 in the first scene, maybe 12 in the next, or maybe you're 50 or so. You're picking through your higher self what's important to look at according to the information you want to see. Even again, if it's just as general as go back to the past life that's most influencing my current life. These are the 4 or 5 scenes that are heavily influencing your current life. And so we'll move to another scene. And then a few more, we'll get to the end of that life. Now move forward to the last day, the last hours of that life. Are you passing because of old age or illness or injury or something else? And that last few moments in that life is where a lot of this throwing action, a lot of this connection happens to the current life. Because it's in that life, as this life ends, are there any regrets? Is there any pain you're still holding on to? Is life fair or unfair? Is love easy or hard? It was the loneliness so overwhelming that you're still experiencing. What are the experiences and the feelings you're having in those last moments? Are you making any decisions about life or family or money that may affect and influence your current life? Are you vowing revenge for something that happened in that life? And so this is where a lot of that attachment can happen. Moving out of that life, you're now back in soul state. And we can move back up into the memories of being a soul in soul world, arriving at the gateway to soul world, or life between lives, whatever you want to call it. And in that soul state, who greets you at the gateway to invite you back into home? Because this is a familiar place. This is where you've been growing as a soul. But a soul, it's just you take these little trips to Earth to learn and to grow, and maybe you're going here with your soulmate group, according to the information again from the Michael Newton books and what I talk about in my Past Lives Guidebook, is that as we're created as souls, however that works, there's a whole nother conversation somewhere down the road, but we're created as souls, born as souls, however that works. And then we're like placed as little kids into a classroom, a pod of souls that we all learn and grow together. So like you'd move with the same group of kids all the way to getting your master's degree together in life or love or joy or whatever it is. And there are other pods or other groups. It's like you're in school, you're 6 years old. And in America, that's probably like first grade, second grade. But there's other second grade classes. There's other groups of 6-year-olds in the same school. Maybe they've got different teachers and things, but you may interact with each other. You may put, hey, we need an extra person for our presentation. Or maybe you do a big show at the end of the year for all the parents or something. And so you group together. So we have these groups, but we can interact with other groups and the people in your life today. We can find out, is there some sort of soul connection? Is this person part of your soul group? Have you had other past lives with this person? You may want to find out more about why your mother is the way she is. What do you need to learn? How do you need to be? How do you need to grow because she is the way she is? Your father, brothers and sisters, the friend who you had as a little kid but then moved away, are they part of your soul group? And you find out information about your soul group, the members of your soul family. Maybe you have a primary soulmate. Have you had other past lives with them? Are you engaged with them in this life? Go to the healing place. We always go to the healing place, even if the specific interest in past life regression wasn't about healing, but just maybe curiosity and interest in gaining more knowledge and information about your current life as related to past lives. That's, again, totally valid and worthy way of doing it. But we always go to the healing place because maybe there's something unknown, unconscious that needs to be released and let go. And so people go to healing place, and it may be the healing center, the healing building. And again, I'm guessing there's probably not buildings, or some people may experience the healing or the soul recharge, energizing of the spirit, maybe with water, like they're soaking in a pool of healing water, or a stream of water, or a waterfall washing like a shower, or maybe it's blue healing energy or yellow healing energy, or yellow golden healing light. Or maybe there's healing beings berobed and bejeweled, and they have these rods that go up and down to create that healing and recharge. I'm going to guess that in this soul state, there's probably not water there. There's probably not a grandiose building that you go to in terms of the healing place. That's how our brain needs to translate that information, how process this 5D information, this digital 5D information is getting translated and processed by this 3D analog brain. And so there needs to be some accommodations, maybe in terms of translating. And so in and of itself, I'm going to put money down that there's not water in spirit world, but your brain may translate the healing that's happening as well. The only thing I can compare this to is like water. Okay, let's make it water. It's just a way of allowing this. It's like people who had near-death experiences, and maybe they go to that soul world or that soul state or some however that works, and they see colors that they've never seen before. How do you describe a color you've never seen before? It's like describing color to a person who's been blind since birth. How do you describe blue to somebody? You can describe it through feeling. It feels cool. It feels cold. But does that really explain blue and the various shades of blue? You can describe a color you've never seen before. It's black with some brown and a whole lot of yellow in it. That makes no sense. But that's the only way to describe it. And it doesn't really describe it at all, but it's the only way this brain of ours can maybe translate something extraordinary. And so in soul world, is it a literal healing with water or energy? Maybe. I don't know. But I'm guessing to a certain extent, some of it's symbolic and metaphoric. So because that's the way the brain has to translate these extraordinary information. But we can also move to other places. So we go where you want to go. The two leading questions I'll ask, is it time to go to the healing place? Because we definitely want to go there. And as we are getting towards the wrap-up phase, is it time to go to the current life viewing room, which is what Michael Newton calls it? And it's the opportunity to find out more about this life that you're living right now as you. Why? Why where you live? Why your family? Why the hurt and pain maybe you have gone through, the breakups or the people in your life that you hold close. More information about the people who have maybe made a huge impact in your life. Maybe even just that one teacher you had for one semester, but made such a huge impact. Maybe you've never seen them again, but they had an extraordinary impact. Are they part of your soul group in some way? Are they part of your spirit guide coming down in human form to set you back on the path you were supposed to be on? And what is your path? What is your purpose, your ultimate goal, your mission? This is all information you can find out in a past life regression and spirit world memory. And again, it's not that you're time traveling. It's not like in the movies, you go back in time and you can change things and then you come back to now and everything's different because butterfly affected it. It's just accessing a memory. And again, we're all allowed to do that. But the extraordinariness of this work is by accessing those memories and understanding a little bit more about what has happened in the past and how that affects you in relating to the world in this life can be quite healing, let alone the actual healing work that can happen up in spirit world. And again, just the model I work with, I was originally trained just to do these 90-minute sessions, and they just kept getting longer and longer. And because there's more questions, it's just exciting. It's exciting work to do. And it's like, more questions to ask. I'm watching the clock and maybe they have to go pick up their friend from the airport. I don't know, but it's exciting and they're getting such great information and I keep asking questions. And what people may not understand is that we're having a conversation during your experience that you're having. You're telling me about your memories. One, that helps me facilitate and guide and maneuver through the memories you are having, especially if there's certain questions or certain aspects of it you're interested in, and I make sure we find out that information, or at least ask the information. But it's also for the recording. They record this so you can listen to it later. And so I'm asking questions, and I know this question leads to that question leads to another entirely different question. And maybe that relates to something we talked about on the phone the week before as we were setting this up. You told me a week before that this in your current life, does that have anything to do with it? You start asking all these extraordinary questions. And we want to record that because if this is a 3-hour session, it's like watching a 3-hour movie. Yeah, you watched a 3-hour movie, but in a month, are you going to remember the entirety of that 3-hour movie? Probably not. But if you have not only the recording of it, so you listen to it again, and the transcript's even nicer because then you just find whatever word or phrase you're looking for and go back to that specific spot instead of trying to fast forward or rewind the recording. But going back to the 90-minute session, they just kept getting longer and longer. And I started saying, wait, I'm doing it wrong. I'm asking too many questions. And then I realized as I dove in deeper into the Michael Newton work in the Michael Newton Institute, oh, they're doing 3-hour sessions. All those Michael Newton sessions in the 70s and 80s before the book came out, Jōrni of Souls in 1992, those 2 decades worth of sessions, he was doing 3-hour sessions, 3.5-hour sessions. And that made a lot more sense to me because it's just like having a conversation. If you have a half an hour conversation, you get a half an hour worth of information. If you have a 2-hour conversation, how much more information can you get? There's, in terms of, again, the model I use, 2 options. The shorter 90-minute version, which is still extraordinarily a lot of information you pick up. And it doesn't seem like 3 hours. It seems like 10 minutes. Just because you have that relaxed dilution of time when you go into that trancey state. But again, it's like you're in this trance state and yet have full ability to communicate with me. If we need to take a break, we take a break. You're going to be able to drop back into it. Oftentimes, if you've never experienced this kind of work before, we'll do a warm-up exercise at the very beginning and just to relax the body and make sure that technology is working, because I do most of the stuff over Zoom because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes, which makes this nice because now I can work with people around the country and around the world. At times, it's morning time for me, and I'm guessing it's evening time for you, Petra, so it works. And this journey about modern technology. And the reason it works so well over Zoom is because I'm not doing anything to you per se. This isn't Reiki. It's not certainly not massage where I have to be massaging muscles and things like this. This is me guiding you through your own experience, through your own abilities to do this. But yeah, be relaxed and comfortable in your home. So I do most of this over Zoom, and it can be quite a healing experience. So I'm going to take a breath and drink water because I've been talking a bit, but it's quite an extraordinary experience just to find out more about your current life, more about you as a soul, as far as, because we're playing these roles, not like an actor in a theater troupe. I think I made this analogy last time, but there's this group of actors who form a theater troupe, and they're going to do 6-7 plays throughout the year. And in January, say, okay, what's the first play of the year? So let's do this play from the 1960s, a hipster beat poet play. And okay, here's who plays what character, and here's the costumes we're going to wear, and here's how these characters go from Act 1 to Act 3 and change and develop. And you do that play, and then they take a break, and then in March they say, okay, now what play? Let's do a Shakespearean play. Okay, let's go back to the 1600s, and here's the costumes we wear, and here's who plays what role, and here's how these characters are going to move from Act 1 to Act 3, the same actors, they're just playing a different role. And so you can find out so much more about the role you're playing in this life and who in your life may be there to help support and guide and poke you with a stick, and even just through the experiences that may have not been fun and may have been quite ugly, how that has helped you develop as a person.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Craig. And what a fascinating conversation. And I'm certainly very curious about the sessions and everything that you explained. And one thing that came up for me as you were talking about this is, of course, the fact that, and we are coming into a bit of uncharted territory here, I feel, because we don't really know for sure. But is it your perspective that there is a piece of us that sort of transcends each of these lifetimes and stays with us because we're accessing, as you said, a memory? So there must be a piece of us that remembers this over hundreds of years or different lifetimes that we can access.
Yeah. And again, coming from the work of Michael Newton, and again, not that it was just he worked with 1 or 2 people, but he worked with, in the Michael Newton Institute, worked with hundreds of thousands of people over the last 60 years. And so the information comes from many people having the same experience and gaining the same information through asking their spirit guide or other spirit beings up in soul world. And the way Michael Newton explains it in his books, and I explain it in some in Past Lives Guidebook, is that we are soul, we are spirit, and we take part of that energy to place it in this avatar of us here on earth. And so there's this connection between your amount of soul energy you have to animate this body, mind, soul here on earth, as well as some that remains up there in that spirit world. So there's a connection. And in terms of how we access, one of the things, where did I put it? It's on the floor, but I showed it last time, is that research study about consciousness being, and the brain being a right read head interacting with the omnipresent background field, which sounds weird and strange. But what it's suggesting is that consciousness, again, being non-local, not housed within this brain not being a storage house, but an antenna, and that this information is held within the 0 point field, the omnipresent background field. So when you look at an atom, atom makes up me, makes up you, makes up the furniture around us, all those things, the air. When you look at an atom with your electron microscope, you see the neutrons, the electrons, you see the subatomic particles and the quarks and all those things. But the very essence of an atom is this energy field. And so that's what that research is suggesting, is that this information that we're pulling in, whether it's that vacation you took 2 years ago, what was school like when you were a little kid, what's your earliest memory, as well as past life memories, that's all held within 0 point field. That's the big library. That's the Akashic Records. That's the book of your lives. And that's how we pull in the information. Again, just like there's 50 unknown radio signals moving around you up in the airwaves, whatever that means, let alone the television signals that are still going on, let alone the internet and the Wi-Fi and the cell tower stuff. All this stuff is that you don't know it. But because I have this little device, I can pull in the wisdom of the entire world I have in this phone. It's not in the phone, but I'm pulling it in through the phone. And I have a couple of songs, a couple of pictures on my phone, but I'm using this show in America, Parks and Rec, and Ron Swanson calls it a wonderful rectangle. And this wonderful rectangle does not hold all the wisdom of the world and the history of the world and all the research of the world, but I can pull it in through this phone. This is what this research is saying the brain is doing. It's acting like this phone and pulling it in. And one of the reasons we can do this is because part of our soul energy is still there, maybe in that energy field. Again, these are theories. There's the theory of the holographic universe. And the holographic universe, a hologram, every bit of information that creates that hologram has the entirety of the hologram in it. And so that's that thing back in when I was going in school, you could get these 3D bookmarks and you could turn them a little bit and it was like a dolphin jumping out of the water or something, or the sun setting or something. But you turn it and it had this cool image that was 3D looking and moved. And if it was a true holographic bookmark, if you cut it in half, you now have 2 images of a dolphin jumping out of the water. They're just smaller. You cut that bookmark into 100 little tiny pieces and really anger your mom because she spent $3 on it. But you cut it up into 100 pieces and you have this tiny little dolphin jumping out of the water because the entirety of the image is within every aspect of that hologram. So if this is a holographic universe, we're part of the holographic universe, that would imply that we have the entirety of it all within us because we are part of that hologram, let alone the multiverse, let alone computer simulation. People way smarter than me are still scratching their heads and trying to figure it out. But in terms of the research coming from the Michael Newton Institute and other places, it seems that part of our soul energy is still there up in that soul world. We only bring a little bit down with us. And so it's usually not a 50-50 split. Maybe it's 70-30. And so you leave 70% up in soul world, you bring 30% down here, or maybe you leave 20% up there, you bring 80% down here, depending on what you need to work on and what you need to do. And what's interesting is, again, according to the experiences people are bringing back from going to soul world, and again, just verified by many people having the same information, is that the more energy you bring here, maybe the harder time you're going to have in terms of being able to process. And if you're bringing 80, 85, 90% energy to here, you may blow the circuitry, as it were. So maybe that person mumbling to themselves, walking down the street in filthy clothes, maybe blew out their circuitry because they felt they had some important work to do. And now it's just like trying to run a car that's blown a gasket or something. It's just maybe things aren't processing very well. If you bring too little, maybe you're bringing 20%, 15%, maybe you struggle with depression and lack of motivation or inspiration. This is an entirely different question, but not a question, a different tangent. But one aspect of this is a twin flame experience. And again, that's a totally different tangent and opens up a whole nother can of worms. But the original idea around twin flames now seems to have been morphed into something else, like it's your ultimate soulmate kind of experience. So the terminology has changed, but in terms of the way it was understood just even back in the 80s and 70s, let alone Plato talking about it, was that when you're making the decision to come back here on Earth, and you think, I'll bring 40% energy down to Earth, and you think, what if I broke that up into two, and there's two of my soul energy working to learn and to grow? I would just go twice as fast. And Michael Newton mentions this in his books. And seemingly the spirit guides always say, no, don't do that. It never works out. They think, no, it's going to work this time. And then you just basically have two depressed people wandering around the earth because you only got 20% energy instead of one person, you have them 40. But the idea is that you gain more knowledge, you gain more information, twice as much. And that's the original concept of what a twin flame is. It's your other part of your soul energy you brought to earth. And that may not necessarily mean a romantic connection. And so that's why the term is morphed into something else nowadays, which is fine and grand and everything. But in terms of how it originally was being used, is it meant that you divided your soul energy, and there was me on one part of the world and somebody else in another part of the world. And maybe we meet, probably not, because what would be the point? But there may be this feeling of disconnect until you reunite, and that may be part of the issue. Therefore, you spend all your time trying to find the other part of your soul energy instead of working on what you're supposed to work on. And then you end the life, and this soul guy's, I literally told you before you went down there. Now we got to do it again. And in terms of the question, it seems that part of our energy is still there. And again, however that works, whether it's we are part of that omnipresent background field of energy, or the 0 point field, the field, or the force like in Star Wars, or however it works, part of our soul energy seems to still be there. And that's how we can connect.
It's really fascinating to hear you talk about that. And it certainly brings up so many questions as far as how this actually affects our health, our mental well-being, and different angles of how we're thriving on this planet, how we're thriving in our lives. And certainly, I find that as you're explaining, for example, some of the research coming from the Institute, they're working with a lot of people, and they're, I want to say, experimenting on this live with people. There certainly is a part that if that path feels like it is part of what you believe in, your belief system, or what you want to work with, that there are massive opportunities for our own healing in these past life regression sessions, and working with these memories as well, as they are rippling, of course, into this life and affecting us here.
Yeah, and that's what's extraordinary about it. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, is to a certain extent, we're not probably allowed to know. Maybe we'd blow the circuitry if we really saw the entirety of the library and spirit world and all of our past lives. Again, would it not be like 50 radio stations playing all at once, plus the static in between the stations all at once? Just how do you differentiate between the songs and the talk and the sports and all this stuff? So maybe it's too much for this 3D analog brain to handle all that. So we can get glimmers and bits and pieces. Seem to have a better access of this information when we're children. And maybe just because the circuitry is brand new, or the mind's not, mind, body, soul aren't filled up with so much tension and pressure and stress, or I don't get. A lot of this is conjecture and trying to piece something from here to this information from over there and put this puzzle together. But I'm sure we're just getting this little section of the puzzle, and we don't see the entirety of it at all. It's this extraordinary thing of finding out all this information and talking about it, and then realizing at the end of your conversation that there's more questions than we even answered. It's that thing of the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. It's like math. I didn't know there was math, and 2 + 2 = 4. And then all of a sudden, wow, there's times tables, there's division. Oh, and then there's calculus, and there's algebra, and there's trigonometry and geometry. Oh, I wish I had just not started math, because it just gets bigger and bigger and more complicated and more head scratching. And the more you know, and not that I don't wish I hadn't done those, it's been extremely fascinating. I got years and decades to continue reading and researching and working with people. I don't know. And that's a lot of the work you all do too. And Jōrni is not only working with people, but also trying to find more answers, answering more questions.
Absolutely.
With whether the telesummits you do, or these like little 4-part series that you do, or the podcasts, or even the retreats you have. It's not only here's what we know so far and how you can build up to be your best life. But man, look at all these new questions we just didn't even know we had before we started.
That's how I'm feeling right now.
It's fun. It makes us like, okay, what are you going to show us next in the next series that you have?
Yeah. And I feel this also is part of, for our listeners, to really experience these things for themselves, to maybe answer some of those questions. You and I are talking about this, and you've had your experience, I've had my experiences, but really listeners can't experience that for themselves unless they go and do a session and they dive in and they feel what that feels like in their bodies and their minds. And then maybe some of those questions actually become clearer, or they might have more questions as they go along.
That's actually a good point, because I don't think I ever mentioned this part that I'm not a past life reader.
Yeah.
I'm not a medium, I'm not a psychic. I don't have that skill set at all. No talent in that whatsoever. And valid and worthy. And if that's the experience you want to have, fine. It's like going to tarot reader or something. You want somebody skilled and understanding and have the ability to do that skill. To me, it's like playing the guitar or the cello or something. It's like we all have the ability to play the guitar and the cello. Maybe not well, but we can all put a little chord on a cello and pull a bow. And we're not going to play Royal Albert Hall or Carnegie Hall or whatever, but we can play the cello. But there are people who are masterful at that instrument, or dance, or we can all dance. We don't jump around and have fun and feel that joy. But there are some people who should be ballerinas and be dancers on stage and things because they have that talent. And same with this work. We have the ability to access the Akashic records and especially do this work yourself. There may be people who have the stronger antenna so they can help other people as that way. But again, a long answer to not even a question you even asked. But that's not what this is. As worthy and valid as that may be for somebody, this is somebody, like you just said, having their own experience. And I'm here to guide and to facilitate that and your ability to do that. And I have recordings on my website. You can do this recording. You can find recordings of Brian Weiss and Dolores Cannon on YouTube. And you can maybe move through one of those. But again, that's more generalized. I have recordings on my website that you can use to find out more about a past life that focuses on the purpose in your current life and your most spiritual past life and things like this. But again, it's be somewhat general because I'm not able to ask questions about the experience you're having. And so that's the difference between a reader, a recording, and an actual experience. Is, of course, we're going to have more depth in a one-on-one session. But again, it's just we all have that connection. Our soul energy is still up there. So we all have the ability to do it. And it can be quite insightful, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel sad that we've come to the end of our series. We're wrapping up, and maybe we'll do another series. It seems to be there are many other rabbit holes we can dive into with this. But we want to leave listeners just with maybe a different perspective, a bit different of an outlook of things they might want to try. And now that they've heard more about hypnosis, past life regression, even spiritual hypnotherapy, maybe coming into a place where we're saying, okay, yeah, maybe this might be one thing that I'd like to try. It's made me curious, and maybe this is part of my healing journey. So if we've done that, then inspired our listeners to look at this from a different way, I think we've done our jobs. And I want to thank you, Craig, for spending this time with me and sharing your wisdom with us. I feel you have so much to share and so much to teach us. And it's been an absolute pleasure to put this all together in this series.
Oh, I think I know how much work this is. It's so much work. And so I appreciate so much you and Tracy and your entire team putting this stuff together, especially like a series of 4. Everybody's made it to this far and you want more information, certainly I'm happy to talk with you one-on-one, email or text, phone call or Zoom, and answer any questions anybody might have. And I'll keep my eye on the comments and all the different places this gets put. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.
Absolutely. And we will link to Craig's information in the show notes as well so that you know how to get a hold of him. And if this is something that has piqued your curiosity, then you can connect with him directly, find out more, and maybe even step into your own session and see what that feels like. Have your own experience. And with that, we are wrapping up the 4-part Hypnotica series today with a talk about past life regression therapy. And if you haven't listened to the first 3 parts yet, I highly suggest that you come to the podcast and look up the first 3 parts. It's been an absolutely inspiring and fascinating conversation that we've had. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Be well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.